All right, Christian Harris spoke today. Hadn't heard from him yet during training camp, but he and Henry To'oTo'o and a couple of the other young linebackers, the older guys, really, it's looking to be more of a competition than maybe I thought it was. But uh, Christian Harris has been looking really good. So is Henry To'oTo'o. This is just a brief little tease of what he talked about.
Really everywhere. We got guys coming from everywhere with pressure, and it's something exciting for me. It's something I'm used to from playing at Alabama. We had a lot of those in our defense. It's just a lot of different complex blitzes. So, it's just really good to get back in that position and work those things.
Okay, so a lot of complex blitzes, and complex might be a little bit of a misrepresentation for what D'Amico's defense is as a whole. I think the illusion of complexity is something that you'll hear a lot from both these guys on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. And one thing the Texans do to make things complex, or will do, is just to disguise things really well and then come from all directions. And Christian Harris last year did some really, really good things. But when he wasn't doing really good things, it looked like he was a little out of sorts and uncomfortable and didn't always fit properly. So far, it's looked different than that. Like D'Amico really, really emphasizes making it as simple as possible to allow guys to play fast, but also in doing so, do a few things to create the illusion of complexity. Just to give you a little taste of what Christian Harris did that was really good last year, and also a bit of what others have observed. I heard Clint Sterner, my colleague at Sports Radio 610, talking about him the other day. So I pulled what Clint had been saying about Christian Harris and overlaid some highlights from last year. I pulled these highlights from AO Texans. I think his watermark is spelled wrong, so I linked it below. It's already linked. Usually I say I'll link it below, and then I forget to link it. It's linked below. I pulled from the highlights there, but he curated a bunch of good highlights from last year. Here's Christian Harris and Clint Sterner talking about him from this year.
We've talked a lot about the secondary as the point. And I'm going to be honest with you, I found myself today watching the linebackers and watching Christian Harris in particular. I caught myself watching him today and was quickly reminded of how good this dude is. I mean, when you look at the linebacker crew as a whole, potentially Christian Harris, Denzel Perryman, Christian Kirksey, Henry To'oTo'o, in front of that secondary, man, the second level of this defense I probably haven't given it the attention and the respect that it deserves. I'm watching them today out there, man, and they got a chance to be damn good. Now it's going to take some young dudes balling. It's going to take some veterans staying healthy.
Yeah, so obviously, like it always takes all those things. And Clint, I showed that to Clint earlier, and he's like, "Man, Chief, I repeat myself a lot." I was like, no. I cut that down from like 3 minutes, so I made you repeat yourself in short succession. But I felt it added emphasis there, Clint. It was all good. It was very nice what you were saying about Christian Harris, and that was from, I think, Friday's practice. So Christian Harris ended up speaking today. We got a questioner from a listener today asking about D'Amico's comments from this weekend when he talked about Christian Harris. Said, "Hey guys, I was wondering if you could have a discussion around D'Amico mentioning working on Christian Harris's eye progression." I found that pretty interesting. I've always thought that's probably the hardest thing to coach. Maybe give us some details on what this exactly means and how to apply. I will do one better. I will have D'Amico Ryans and Christian Harris explain it, and then I'll have Fred Warner, who was one of the linebackers in San Francisco that D'Amico started out with and really did great things for. You guys have heard me talk about Fred Warner over and over and over again, but I've got more Fred Warner clips with him explaining a little bit about eye discipline. Here's first D'Amico Ryans and DJ Swearinger, somebody mentions. Here's D'Amico Ryans and Christian Harris.
It's all about eye progression. When you're playing a linebacker position, if your eyes are in the right place, right, you're probably going to be right 99% of the time.
Knowing where to put my eyes at, and I think that's a major thing as well that goes along with, doing those drills and working on the footwork is my eye progression as well. But for when I do get in that position where I know what I'm looking at and everything, I want to make the most of that opportunity. So just trying to sharpen it for that.
Okay, so what to focus on? Sometimes focusing in on something is all about what you can ignore. especially in football and especially as a linebacker, as a middle linebacker. Think of a young middle linebacker or a young off-ball linebacker. I think these guys are going to be somewhat interchangeable, but I wouldn't be surprised if Toa ends up playing Mike. Anyway, keying on running backs when you're supposed to key on the running back, keying on a guard when you're supposed to key on a guard, keeping your eyes on whoever you're going to have in coverage if they're crossing the formation. All these things are things that like need to become automatic. And last year, I think Christian Harris is really swimming in space a little bit. So just like watch Fred Warner when he talks about exactly where his eyes are on this next play.
So right there, I'm thinking they're in a bunch that if one of those guys in the bunch motions over, I know that our safeties are rocking and rolling, and me and Quan are staying in our same exact gap, so I don't have to move. And if I had not been thinking that ahead of time, I might have snapped my eyes over there and saw OBJ motioning over, and that would have been a second slower, right? But instead, I already knew he was going, so I just kept my eyes on the back, key in the back, feeling the line coming off hard, be able to get my shuffle steps in and get that leverage right away.
So, like, that's all some of the really good stuff that they do in the run. It starts with the linebackers really understanding, and this defense especially, understanding their run pass keys and recognizing run when it's run and getting downhill. And you saw some examples of that with Christian Harris's highlights. He's very capable and adept of getting vertical. Then it's also recognizing and understanding when it's pass so you can get back into your coverages, because all these guys, because of the way this base defense aligns, all these linebackers, whether it's a Sam, a Mike, or a Will, they got to be good at getting back into coverage. But especially more so this Sam linebackers more so than in a typical 4-3. And we can show that a little bit more later. But D'Amico then went on to discuss one of the things that makes Christian Harris good is his attention to detail.
Just the fine details of what we have to do to be successful. And Christian has been tuned in to ask great questions when it comes to what should he be doing. So it's fun to coach a guy who's very inquisitive and wants to know everything about what's going on around him.
So like that's a hallmark of everything that D'Amico's talked about. And like we knew about that with D'Amico as a player is really wanting to understand everything that's going on around him. You saw Fred Warner there talking about him understanding what was happening in coverage behind him. And because of that, he didn't have to worry about the receivers changing their numbers. And he could just focus in on his keys and what he was supposed to key. That only works if you know what everybody is doing and then extend it on into knowing exactly what the offense is doing and why they're doing it. And that's going to be important because, as Christian Harris explains, he's going to be in coverage a lot more this year.
I'm in space a lot more coverage responsibility, as well as, it's not just knowing the defense, it's knowing offense's formation recognition, just so I can be able to anticipate and use my playmaking ability.
Okay, so recognizing formation, down and distance, tendencies, all that stuff that needs to become natural and ingrained in somebody. Here's Fred Warner with a really nice example. This is from the Play Football YouTube channel. I linked it down below as well. I already linked that. You see how damn prepared I am today? It's impressive.
Right here, third and short, and they're in a bunch that they're passing the ball one, and you probably can guess the route concept too. So, and usually on third and short, it's out of a bunch that they're trying to run a spot concept. Spot concept is where they're trying to have the point man right here in that bunch run an in route. A guy run to the flat and a guy run right over the football. Knowing that, I'm thinking it's a bunch that I need to make sure I'm getting 1 yard outside that point, and as long as I drop about 5 yards, 1 yard outside that point, there's going to be somebody coming into my area. And so that's exactly what my thought process is pre-snap, and so that's exactly where I get to post-snap, and you see exactly where I'm going, and there's a receiver right there. So that's exactly what happened on this play, and that's why I was able to get in a position to cover that route, I believe.
Yeah, so like you talk to Fred Warner and over again, it's stuff like that. Him just in crediting D'Amico all the time about teaching him exactly how to recognize formations, how to recognize tendencies. I remember Jamie Sharper when he came here to the Texans. He'd been with Baltimore, won the Super Bowl with Baltimore. Jamie Sharper, linebacker for the Texans in the first few years, but he had said when Jack Del Rio was his position coach, that's when he really learned, like, basically the keys. It's like the secret key to the vault when you start figuring out exactly like all these little clues about what to key in on and what the offense is telling you. And it's incredible how much it matters for linebackers because everything happens right then. And if you take one false step, that actually means that you're 3 steps behind because you take one step the wrong way and you get to take another step back to get to where you were and then take another step. And the really smart guys a lot of times don't have 4.3 40s. They just have really, really good recognition. And I'm hoping that's what Henry To'oTo'o and then Christian Harris this year really get to. To'oTo'o, I think, is well on his way. Him being buddies with Christian Harris is nice. I feel good about that. We'll hear a little bit more about that. But now we're going to start getting into the part that I get really excited about. First, D'Amico's asked on Friday or Saturday about how long the process takes for a guy like Christian Harris to really get comfortable in the system.
Each person is different. It takes some guys, 2-3 years to do it. Some guys are faster. So it just takes time. Each guy's different. Christian will be just fine.
Okay, so Christian will be just fine. Just by way of reference, this was Fred Warner pointing out a play from his rookie year, the first time he ever started at Mike linebacker.
Back playing right here, I didn't really even know what I was doing. I'm just playing, I'm just playing ball. It's literally my first game playing Mike backer, and I'm just it was just, all instincts.
So this is what I get excited about, though, because that part about playing off of instinct, I think, goes back to, at that point, Robert Saleh would have been the defensive coordinator. D'Amico Ryans is the linebackers coach, understanding exactly just how much you can simplify and what a guy can handle. And then you build from there. I think both offensively and defensively, these guys talk about that a lot, really just building, stacking up, basic proficiency and then adding on to it. That's what they're doing on offense right now. But the part I get excited about, and I only had a taste of this once or twice in my career. One time it was when Hardy Nickerson played for us. He was coming off of those little Tampa 2 defenses, But Hardy was the first linebacker I ever had that said, no, all I want is the defensive lineman to bust shit up and create chaos, and then the linebackers will sort it out behind them. Like this idea that basically we just want the defensive line to be hand grenades, and then our linebackers are good and smart enough to fill in behind them. This is D'Amico's philosophy. Within reason, the defensive line has to play with discipline, but more than anything, they want to just create havoc up front.
For our linebackers and anybody that plays off the ball behind it, my terminology for our guys is always our D-line is going to be disruptive, and it's the back seven's job to clean it up. And so with that being said, we have to have smart players, instinctive players at that second level who can play off of our D-line.
So, that's cleaning up behind the defensive line. Ted Johnson and I used to talk about this because Ted had only played under a Belichick scheme, very disciplined defensive lineman, know your role, 2 gap, 1 gap, but play with gap integrity. And when Ted would watch JJ kind of freelance, but he was freelancing because he was allowed to freelance. It was within the structure. Anyway, it used to drive Ted crazy. And I was like, Ted, no. Some defenses, there's a Shangri-La out there where the defensive linemen are allowed to just bust stuff up and then the guys fill in behind them. But you got to have really good and smart linebackers to do that. D'Amico was that kind of linebacker, obviously. Fred Warner, as you might have guessed by now, I feel is a good example for a lot of this. And I know these guys are watching a lot of San Francisco tape. Will Anderson talked about that today. So they're watching this same stuff that we're watching right now.
You got to just play ball. My D'Amico Ryans, my linebacker coach always said, don't play like a robot, be a ball player.
Yeah, so don't be a robot, be a ball player. Some coaches say that, but then as soon as you start not playing like a robot, they treat you like C3PO in episode 4. Is that the Star Wars, right? Yeah, the original Star Wars, episode 4. When they threw C3PO in the compressor and he had half a body and everything. That's what they tell you. They said, we don't want you to play like a robot, but don't make any mistakes. D'Amico's actually the real deal. He wants you to not play like a robot. He wants you to just bust stuff up and then play off of instinct, an informed instinct. But he's going to show
So that's exactly what happens right here.
Okay, so They highlighted this defensive lineman who immediately loses his gap right off the bat here.
Defoe, an outstanding athlete, outstanding player for our defense. He tries to dip inside to
So he dips inside, which like most of the schemes I played in, if I had done that, I would have gotten mother bleeped like a kid that didn't deserve to
make a play, gets cut out, so I have to replace him right away. And I'm just literally playing running back. It's me and Dalvin Cook both playing running back, so I'm looking for the open hole. And as soon as Dalvin commits to that open B gap, then I'm just falling right where he is.
Yeah. So, and I see the questions about CJ Stroud's interceptions in the comments. We'll get to those. I wanted to do this today. Okay. I could have done a practice reaction, but I wanted to do this because I've been collating some of this stuff, and Christian Harris ended up speaking at the podium. So, that part of it, I think Christian Harris and Henry To'oTo'o, as well as Denzel Perryman, Corey Littleton, and these other guys that they brought in are all very adept at this. I think they're all going to blossom and thrive under D'Amico's tutelage. So very excited about that. Here is D'Amico on Henry To'oTo'o himself.
With Henry, I'm impressed just by his recall of the things. Once we give him something to correct, he does a really good job of banking that rep and not making that same mistake again. So I'm encouraged with Henry, and he's caught up to speed very well.
And then, of course, Christian Harris and Henry To'oTo'o were very good friends at Alabama, like bosom buddies, super tight. So it's cool for them to be together. And then obviously Will Anderson comes into the fold. This is Christian Harris talking about Henry To'oTo'o and what it's like being reunited with him.
No, it's real fun. It's right. It's nice. That's like the chemistry is a lot like it was in college, as far as just being able to communicate, just trusting each other and stuff like that. So definitely makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah. The one thing that also gets harped on a lot is communication. And it's funny because going back to Richard Smith, the first defensive coordinator that D'Amico Ryans had in the NFL, and who I wasn't a huge fan of. But obviously that's just sour grapes from a dude that was old. And anyway, one of the things that Richard Smith was really good at and emphasizing was the need to be loud, that good defenses are loud defenses. And that's something I still hear D'Amico saying. And it's echoed in like what Fred Warner talks about.
Hey, let's go. Hey, one play at a time, man. Over-communicate. Over-communicate one play at a time. Let's dominate. Hey, you got him. You got him. Hey, alert one. Alert one. Hey, slide right, slide right, slide right. Dre, you might have one. Come here. Yeah, Dre. There we go, boy.
Get him, Max, right here. Right here. We didn't change the game. That's how you change the game. That's it right there. No.
And a little bit of D'Amico there too. So look, I think that the defense is something to get excited about. I genuinely think that they're going to be better than I was willing to hope they could be. I don't mean that. I think they're going to take a big step forward. Now, when Saleh got to San Francisco, they took a little while to turn around the defense. So it wasn't immediate. And just like Houston, San Francisco had to add some studs. And they added Nick Bosa, or got the best out of Nick Bosa along the way, as well as a few other high draft picks. So I don't know if it's going to happen overnight, but I think it's going to. I don't know if it's going to happen overnight that they turn into a really good defense. I think they're going to be a substantially better defense, particularly against the run, because they've got guys like honestly, like Will Anderson he's an ass kicker. Like he kicks ass. And I was waiting until the pads came on today to really say it, because he's been kicking ass in no pads. And sometimes you can just be Joe Turbo and be doing that, but he's been doing it with really good hands and really good pad level, and very good play recognition. So I like Will Anderson's going to be the real deal. I feel really good about him. There are a few things that happened today in pads for the first time that it's funny. I was going over the other guys that were out there at practice from the media. When you're watching, you only get one or two chances to watch a play. You watch a play and then they'll replay it up on the scoreboard, but there's like a lag. So sometimes you're trying to watch that play while there's another play on the field, and you can't watch all 22 people all at once, right? So I saw a couple guys say today that the Texans couldn't run the ball on offense. I don't know if I agree with that without being able to go back and watch all the film. I saw a good number of plays where the offense opened up some nice running lanes, like some really good on zone runs. They really gashed the defense in the front seven. Other plays where the defense just handed the offense their lunch and had some nice tackles for a loss. So when you're watching your team practice and you want both sides to have some good success, I think that the offense did look better in some respects today, now that they could wear pads, now that they could actually get some drive and push. They still had their share of bad plays, don't get me wrong. CJ Stroud had 2 interceptions. Let's finish talking about the run, and then I'll talk about CJ Stroud. So I think that Juice Scruggs is also the real deal. He plays with very sound technique, His back is always flat. He's always in position. He doesn't give any soft edges for guys to turn his body. And he's got a real good awareness of where he's supposed to be and how to sift out the pass rush and blitzes. So I think he's going to get a chance to start, and I feel pretty good about that. I think that Kenyon Green, from what I was able to watch him today in pads, looked solid enough, but I wasn't able to get a really good shot at him, so I got to watch him more. I think Check Mason looked really good. So there were positive signs in the run game. One thing you got to remember is that this defense is set up specifically to stop the outside zone. Like, this defense is what they implemented to stop the Rams in their outside zone, and they did that. So there's times where the Texans offense is trying to run all that Kubiak-Shanahan stuff, and when they're trying to run their outside zone, the Texans wide 9 defense is just squashing it. So that's by design. There's other things that the offense can do to take advantage of that. We'll see how it progresses along. Really looking forward to seeing these guys versus other teams and other competition. As far as CJ Stroud's interceptions, these were the first 2 he had. I'm glad that he got a couple of interceptions, because if you're not throwing interceptions, then you're not pushing the envelope and learning what you should and shouldn't be doing. Marcus Mariota went through training camp his rookie year without throwing interceptions, and people thought he was going to be the next Johnny Unitas. Let's see, no, it wouldn't be Johnny Unitas. He'd be more of a whoever, somebody better than Marcus Mariota. And if you think about Marcus Mariota's personality and what he became as a quarterback, I think there's a certain level of timidity there that kept him from ever throwing an interception. So today, from what I could see, the first interception of Blake Cashman, Blake actually got beat by whoever was his responsibility in coverage, whether it was a running back or a tight end. Blake let the guy run past him, and Blake turned to get back into his zone because he gotten sucked up to the line of scrimmage. He was a little bit out of position. I think CJ knew that he had to put it between a marauding safety and the linebackers, and he just undershot it a little bit because he saw that Blake Cashman was out of position. So Blake made a hell of a play, I think, and this is a little bit of learning the NFL, that hey, even the nondescript Blake Cashman type linebacker, he might not even know his name yet, is capable of doing stuff like this. So that was a poorly placed ball. And then I think that Stingley just jumped the route on him. And that's, again, learning, from both sides there. He learned how he can get ambushed from somebody in the back 7 coming up, or from somebody in the back 4 coming up. He learned how to get ambushed by a linebacker dropping back. And they were just run of the mill, hey, this is going to happen. This is what rookies need to do. Davis Mills looked good. I think, Davis Mills had a better day than CJ Stroud today. I don't think either of them have looked all that remarkable in any of the practices. So I think that with Xavier Hutchinson, Tank Dell starting to show up more and more, I feel good about those guys' trajectory. As far as both the quarterbacks, I think they're throwing into a lot of tight windows because the receivers aren't that great, and they're not getting as wide open as you're accustomed to seeing in a Kubiak-Shanahan offense. So that's going to be the big question moving forward. Can Xavier Hutchinson, can Tank Dell, can some of these younger guys, can Nico Collins, who's flashed at times in this camp, can those guys keep taking steps forward? Because Davis Mills and CJ haven't had huge interception days, but they've had a lot of balls batted away and not on errant throws. They're throwing balls to where the best place they can and to well-covered guys. And the fact that there haven't been interceptions, I think, is a testament to both those guys and their ball placement at times. So I just hope there's going to be more clarity there, something to help out CJ along the way. But I'm going to wrap it up and maybe do a separate one. I know I still owe you. The Kenyon Green one, but my God, it's 8:25 at night. I've been up since 4 a.m. I can't do the Kenyon Green tonight. I'll do a CJ and a Kenyon tomorrow, maybe. Good day, everybody. Oh, subscribe and like and tell everybody. Hey, Seth Payne's on YouTube. He's awesome. He's the best.